This mutation is called Aggressive Recruitment, and it is being played on Malwarfare. We have 3 Mutators active. We have Propagators, we have We Move Unseen, and we have Speed Freaks. So in case you were wondering, yes, the Propagators are going to be cloaked, and yes, the Propagators are going to be moving at the speed of light. They will be appearing on the minimap, which is one good thing. You will know when the Propagators spawn, and you'll see them making a beeline for your base. The other thing you will notice is that there is no player 2 here. This is indeed a Raynor solo. A lot of you who do follow the co-op community very closely will recognize that Lauren, this guy, is an absolute monster when it comes to Raynor play, and he has chosen to do pretty much one of the hardest weekly mutations we have seen in a very long time. He's going to be soloing that with Raynor. I think the only one that even comes close to this level of difficulty is Memorable Boss, and that was basically because the fact that the attack waves were bugged and how the heroes were spawning, that mechanic was bugged. But Propagators and Speed Freaks and We Move Unseen, just ridiculously nasty set of mutators. So you can see here that Raynor has already started to put down an engineering bay, and that is basically because he wants to get his missile turret out. He is going to need his detection. He's not going to be able to... I don't know if he's going to be using his scans, but having a missile turret out is just going to be so much more useful in having a sustained kind of detection. Now, one of the things that makes it a little bit difficult for Raynor is he doesn't really have a unit that detects for him. You will need to use either static defense in the form of the missile turrets, or he's going to need to use scans. And in the early game, where you really want to use those resources for your mules, as you can see over here, he's already dropped a mule here, it's very important to have an adequate number of missile turrets to be able to handle the first propagator. The first propagator will be spawning, I think, in about 15 seconds. I can't remember exactly when the first propagator spawns, but that propagator is going to be there basically pretty much instantly. And you can see now that a vulture is already down and ready to go, and you can see now this propagator is moving. It does not seem to be moving very fast, but that propagator is just absolutely terrifying once it gets closer, because one misplay, if you are not paying attention to the minimap, if you are not paying attention to where your units are, you will lose the game pretty much instantly, because these propagators move so fast. You can see it here already, and now there's also an attack wave that is coming up towards Raynor's base. You can see here's the propagator over there, and now the propagator gets picked out, and you can see some little bit of damage to some of these banshees. Only 2 banshees have survived as a result of this propagator attack, and now Raynor has to try and lure some of these units away so that he can take his expansion. He's chosen to take his allies' expansion instead of the expansion that is over here. Again, not really too much of an issue, because I think the reason why is you're probably going to have more likelihood of getting propagators spawning on this side. You kind of want to encourage the propagators to move past this area. So what the idea is he's going to start putting down some spire mines on this side and on this side, and he's going to be able to lock down this area in the early stages of the game, and therefore he doesn't really have to worry about his expansion getting nuked by a propagator that is coming up, say, from the bonus objective and from this area as well. Now, the other thing about this map, which is somewhat... I believe it was chosen intentionally, is that propagators will continue to spawn throughout the course of the mission. So, propagators will spawn from enemy buildings, and you can see, I'll explain what's going on over here. Raynor is manually targeting his spire mines here. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But this mission, there's no way of all clearing this mission. Even if you were to clear all the enemy units and structures on the map, the propagators will still spawn, because they spawn from the suppression towers bases that are there, those little white rings. I'll try and show you that in just a little bit as soon as we get some vision of the area. But those little white circle things are valid enemy units, and therefore propagators will continue to spawn throughout the course of the mission, even if you have managed to all clear the mission. And now we have another propagator that's coming up here. Again, we have a bunch of Raynor vultures that will be hiding behind their spire mines just to be able to deal with this next propagator spawn. That propagator also ends up getting picked off. So earlier in the mission, you probably saw Raynor targeting some of these spire mines manually with his vultures, and the reason why he's done this is as these spire mines aggro these enemy units, they will start to move towards the edge of detection of the missile turret, because the missile turret has a certain level of detection area, and the spy mines will start to creep towards the area until they can no longer see the enemy units. And one of the things that can happen is if they actually end up towards the edges of the detection, the propagator can come up to the edge there and actually start killing off these spire mines and propagating them as well. And you don't really want that happening because that would be very, very bad for you. So that is why Raynor is manually targeting and clearing out his spire mines. It's just one more intricate detail that is required for really high level play. And you can see here that Raynor is just not bothering with Orion's transport. He is just going to try and lock down this mission. And that is okay. This is one strategy that you can use, especially if you have slightly slower commanders, is let Orion's transport take damage in the early stages of the game, because she will heal for, I think, 3000 HP per terminal. So as long as you're paying attention to the HP, you have a little bit of time to be able to get through and set your economy up throughout the course of for the rest of the mission. Now, the one thing to also note is that the suppression towers, I think it is 30 seconds or 60 seconds, I can't remember exactly, but after a certain amount of time, the suppression tower will start to rapid fire onto Orion's transport. You can see over here it's already reasonably high attack speed, so you want to also not be caught unaware of that. So taking out the suppression tower is going to be really important, and Raynor will have to start hurrying up because Orion's transport is already at 3000 HP. And you can also see here that the Propagator did not attack Orion's transport. The Propagator is not considered an Amon unit. The Propagator is considered a Mutator unit, and therefore the Mutator units will not aggro map objectives, so the Propagators will not target things like the Vespene Harvesters on missed opportunities and the Orion's transport on Malwarfare. Now the next Propagator has spawned, and now you actually see how quickly these Propagators move forward. And we have a Hyperion over here, and the Hyperion will end up clearing that out, and that Propagator also gets picked up by these Spire Mines. These Spire Mines are slowly creeping towards the edge of detection for these missile turrets. So we have a Hyperion and a Banshee airstrike here to just try and take out this suppression tower before Orion's transport gets a little bit too low. You do not really want it going too much. And you see this white ring over here? This is the thing that will actually spawn the Propagators. And since these things cannot be destroyed by the players, Propagators will continue to spawn throughout the course of the mission, so there's no way of saying, oh, I'm just gonna all clear this mission and problem solved. But overall now, we can see that Raynor already has a lot of orbital CCs over here. He's just producing a lot of orbital CCs. He really needs the economy to be able to sustain the extra vultures that he's going to be using to be able to spawn camp the rest of this mission, because he's going to have to handle the Propagators, and if he's not paying attention, just one Propagator going through, it's game over. The Speed Freaks is just ridiculously nasty with the Propagators. So structures wise, how is he doing in terms of the structures? So yeah, he basically has, unfortunately, some of the Spire Mines are actually taking over some of this area here. We can see he has quite a lot of orbital CCs, and he is not stopping. He is still producing more orbital CCs. 4 command centers are being built now. He just wants to have enough mineral income to ensure that he has enough resources and minerals to be able to support his army, because at some point he's going to have to start pushing out. Because the Orion's transport has healed up a total of 5000 HP as a result of this, and now she's going to start moving forward, and Raynor does not have anything over here to support Orion's transport, but that problem is going to be solved in just a little bit, because he already has 3 barracks over here that are ready to start producing some units. And now you can see that the Photon Cannon has started to aggro Orion's transport. So this is going to slow Orion's transport a little bit before she starts moving up into this area. And there are some Immortals that can deal a lot of damage, so again, you have to be a little bit careful. You can see that the attack wave composition over here is the Siege of Storms. This is an air composition, and the missile turrets here make short work of this. And Propagator over here starting to aggro some of these units, but now there are a bunch of Marines as well over here, and they will end up clearing out this Propagator as soon. And there are a few losses over there, but for the most part, seems to be okay. So 2 Marines, 3 Vultures end up going down. That might have been really, really bad for Raynor, but now he has a Siege Tanks as well in place, and Siege Tanks are really great units for being able to deal with these Propagators. Siege Tanks, they have a reasonably high range, especially with the adequate upgrades here. You can see he's gone for the Advanced Optics upgrade, which is very important. That gives them the extra range, and that will allow them to be able to intercept these Propagators without too many issues. You can see this Propagator is all getting shelled off over here. Tries to eat up one of these Spire Mines, but ends up getting picked up by the Siege Tanks in the end. And now Marines with a bunch of medics, and this is the standard Raynor build. He has a Banshee airstrike as well over here, and a Hyperion being dropped here and he wants to try and clear out these structures as quickly as possible. If a Propagator spawns right here, it could be absolutely devastating for Raynor. So he is going to try his best to clear out all these structures, at least the ones that he can clear, and then he's just going to stand back a little bit and just watch if in case there's a Propagator that ends up spawning. Now the first harass wave has spawned, and you can see there is a Propagator spawn over here, and now these Marines are pretty much in position. The Propagator does end up eating some of these point defense drones that the Hyperion has dropped, but I think it seems to be handled reasonably well, and now there are a bunch of units that are aggroing some of this, but Raynor is paying attention to this Propagator to make sure it does not cause any havoc in his base. Now we get a scan, and the Marines now have the detection that they need to be able to clear out that harass wave. Now Raynor is just going to start pushing it to the side. Now we have another scan as well, and his Marines will be able to clean up this. But again, he has to be really careful. It could just be absolutely devastating if all these units just get converted to a Propagator. So he has to just be aware of when the Propagator spawns are. So now we can see that we have a double Propagator wave, which means that this area is now safe, so he can actually look away and start to deal with this next set of spawns. And there we go, 2 Propagators have been cleared out, and lots of siege tanks over here. And just see how he's fortified this position. This is just to make sure that any Propagator that ends up spawning is not going to last very long against Raynor's army. Unfortunately, Raynor's army is going to take a while to end up clearing out this, but the rest of these structures have been cleared out by Raynor. And now we have a few more units over here. Orion's Transport getting dangerously low, 1,200 HP left on Orion's Transport, and the Suppression Tower is not done harassing Orana, but that is pretty much cleared out as well. There's another Stargate over here. And one of the things to also know is that the Propagator will spawn from a random enemy structure. So the more enemy structures you clear from an area, the less likely you are to get nuked by a Propagator at some point. But we can see that Raynor already is trying to he's just trying to get a foothold in the game to make sure that he doesn't end up getting wiped, and he's able to defend Orion's Transport. And I think for the most part, his economy, he's farmed a total of 23,000 minerals right now. So this number over here is the total number of minerals mined. It's not particularly always from the mules, it's also from the SCVs. But the mules are doing a lot of work here, and you can see just mule hammers coming down onto his main base to just try and just vacuum up all those minerals, and he needs to have enough energy for the scans as well. He's going to be relying on the scans a lot to make sure that he has the detection available to handle the harass waves that come reasonably frequently throughout the course of this mission, as well as pushing into the enemy bases here. So now he's just gotten his army out. You can see no Marauders, it's just a pure Marine medic build, and now there is a stim forward, and he is ready to go, and he's going to start pushing into this next base. Just wants to clear out some of these structures here. I think there is one Stargate that is left over there, but it's not really a big deal for Raynor. Raynor doesn't really care now. He has enough Spiral Mines and Siege Tanks on his base here to be able to stop dealing with some of the harassment from these Propagators. The other thing to also note over here is that he doesn't have any kind of defense on this side. And the reason why is that the Propagator will aggro the closest enemy unit, in this case the player unit, that is closest to them. So over here you can see that the Propagators, even though they are spawning, they will all try and reach and try and attack Raynor's expansion. So as long as Raynor has adequate resources and defenses over here, he can actually freely push around this mission and not really have too many issues with the rest throughout the course of the rest of the mission. So all he has to do is just fortify this side, and you can see that he has adequate number of siege tanks now. So now his Marines are just going to end up clearing out and deleting the rest of these enemy forces. This game will be reasonably normal, as long as the Propagator does not end up spawning. So we can see here it's a reasonably far spawn. I think all these Propagators are just going to run face first into his army, and I think there's now a scan over here, and the Propagator has started to attack some of these Marines, but these Marines with their stim is just, they have a lot of DPS. And I think for the most part, I think the rest of these Propagators are not interested in going for Raynor's army, so they're just going to start clearing out some of this. And Propagators are getting a little bit closer. A few more Vultures try and move a little bit closer to the Propagators, but that might be a little bit dangerous because they are starting to aggro some of these units over here. And I think the attack wave has also spawned, also been cleared out by the Hyperion over here. And I think Raynor's army is good to go. They are just slowly starting to push through and clear out some of the more of the enemy camps, because at some point they will have to push through. There's another Propagator over here, and they have to be really careful. But you can see just the damage output of Raynor's army. The stimmed Marines are just absolutely great at dealing with Propagators, but you have to be a little bit careful. You do not want bad things to happen to you when a Propagator goes and boops your army. And now we have another one coming up over here too, and I think that should be pretty much cleared out. Unfortunately, these things are starting to aggro some of these Spider Mines, because Spider Mines don't deal their damage instantly. They unburrow and then they move towards their target and then they detonate. So there is a small amount of time where the Propagator can actually attack, depending on its backswing. So Propagator over here gets picked off, and I think this Propagator as well, for the most part, is getting cleared out. And there's another one over here, and focus fire down onto that Propagator. That Propagator goes down, and now we just have a bunch of Void Rays that are not going to stand a chance against Raynor's stimmed Marines. And those are those Void Rays cleared out. Raynor's transport is slowly starting to heal up. 3,500 HP left onto that transport, and now the suppression tower is out, and it will spawn a harass wave that will come up over here. So he'll have to be a little bit careful. He'll need to scan, and there you can see just a wonderful scan right on top of that. He's going to end up clearing out the rest of these units. So another Propagator has spawned from this side, and I think should be pretty much cleared out. Those siege tanks just end up shredding that Propagator. Those siege tanks are like, nope, we are not dealing with you. The only issue that comes up when it comes to dealing with the Propagators is when you have multiple Propagators coming through. So you can see something over here, that these Propagators are causing a few problems, because you will drop more of some of the Spider Mines just to end up clearing out these Propagators before they reach the missile turret line. If that missile turret line goes down, it is pretty much game over, I think, because I don't think Raynor would be able to have the time to scan, the reflexes to scan, and keep his siege tanks and the rest of his vultures alive. So see here, this again, Raynor's army is actually moving away. These Propagators seem to be given an attack command towards these bases. I'm not really sure why they're ignoring Raynor's army. This is some of the weird stuff that happens when it comes to dealing with some of the Mutator spawns, because the Mutator spawns they behave a little bit differently. They are not considered Amon's units. They're not really neutral, but they're not considered Amon's units either, which is why they don't aggro map objectives and stuff. Now we can see we have a 5 Propagator spawn, and again, these Propagators are just going to end up ignoring Raynor's army completely, just avoiding that scan over there, and they want to try and attack Raynor's base. But as you can see, this base is well fortified. Raynor is just continuing to push forward. I'm just showing you this because I think this is a little bit more interesting to watch these Propagators try and push through a gajillion Spider Mines. But again, a few more Spider Mines coming up over here as well. And now Raynor's army is going to start pushing into the final base here. We have a Hyperion that gets dropped, which ends up buffing the Marines as well through its passive. And now Raynor is just going to start deleting this side, and he has to be a little bit careful. There is a Propagator as well that seems to have spawned right on top of his army from, I think, this thing here. And I think there's another Propagator that is also over there, but that ends up getting picked off. And now Raynor is just going to start killing off the rest of the enemy defenders in this enemy base. And the Harass transport isn't even halfway through making its way here. And now we have another bunch of Propagators that try to propagate themselves, but alas, they do not succeed. And now Raynor is just going to start pushing through. There are 2 enemy bases to push into, and it's usually a coin flip. There's no way of telling which one is going to trigger the suppression tower. We have another Propagator that has spawned here, but again, the rest of these Propagators are just going to make their way towards Raynor's base. So I think Raynor is just going to wait and see. He doesn't really want to sack too many of his units unnecessarily. And just take a look here, 900 minerals available, the amount of effectiveness, the efficiency of Raynor's play. He's just utilizing all his command centers and his orbital CCs. Look at the number of orbital CCs over here for Raynor. It is absolutely insane. Unfortunately, my server interface is a little bit overwhelmed, because we have 12 orbital CCs for Raynor. And now we have a harass wave that's coming up, and another couple of Propagator spawns. The only one that might attack Raynor's army is this one, but I don't think it's even interested. It just wants to go for Raynor's base. And I think the rest of the... Okay, so this suppression tower now has spawned, so Raynor will start pushing into this enemy base here, and I think all seems to be okay. There are a lot of Spider Mines over here, and that might be a small problem, because this Propagator will start to aggro some of these units. So lots of Spider Mines on this side, and Raynor's army on here, just slowly starting to push into this enemy base. And now we already have the second suppression tower spawn, and this suppression tower does come with a defensive wave, and there is a small attack here from a Propagator. There's a back pull from Raynor's army, and he does end up clearing out that Propagator, but there's still one more in the middle of this army, and I think for the most part everything should be okay. Again, lots of Spider Mines here that are getting aggroed and propagated, but again, these Propagators stand no chance against the damage output from those Spire Mines. Now Raynor is going to send his army over here. We have a scan. You can see these Void Rays now. He'll start to pick them off because the Suppression Tower, there's still plenty of time before the Suppression Tower goes full Super Saiyan onto Orion's Transport. And this was actually a lucky spawn here. A lot of the Propagators did end up spawning from the Cybernetics core, so this should be able to be picked off without too many problems. And yes, I think for the most part, yeah, everything is okay here. And now we have Raynor's army again, going back to try and defend Orion's Transport against the army of Void Rays that are trying to harass her. This next spawn is going to be a little bit more difficult. Raynor will have to deal with a spawn over on this side, as well as he'll pushing into the enemy base with a harass spawn as well next to the Suppression Tower. So this first Suppression Tower has been cleared up. To push into the next side, but he'll have to be a little bit careful as well. There is another harass wave that'll be coming up towards Orion's Transport, but Orion's Transport has 5,000 HP, so there's plenty of time to be able to deal with that, and he just has to make sure he has adequate defenses, because it would really suck if he were to lose his base at the final stage of this mission. So Raynor's army is getting ready and in position. He's going to step forward, and unfortunately there is a force field that comes down to try and keep these units away. And I think there's another Propagator that's causing a few problems, but nothing too much that Raynor can't handle. And now we have another bunch of Marines that are trying to attack here. There's another Propagator. See how the Propagator spawned from that ring, and now Raynor's Marines do end up getting caught out by a lot of Propagators, and that is going to be a bit of a problem. There are a lot of Propagators now, and this is why bad stuff can happen to you if you're not paying attention. And Raynor is not also paying attention. Now he has a scan onto the side, and there is a big chain of Propagators coming up, and this could be really bad. And for a few Propagators do end up getting picked off. Some of the Vultures do end up getting caught out by the Propagators. And again, there are still some more on this side, but I think everything should be okay. Yeah, all the Propagators have been cleared up, and I think this harass wave has also been cleared up. 2,000 HP left on Orion's Transport, but this mission is not over yet. Raynor has to clear out the Suppression Tower, or the mission will not end. Orana is put on hold until that Suppression Tower has gone down. So I think that was the last harass wave that had spawned. So all that is left now is Raynor has to clear out this Suppression Tower, and I think he's cleared out pretty much all the enemy units there. And I think, yeah, that should be it. This last Suppression Tower is going to end up going down. And now Raynor can go back at 500 HP left on Orion's Transport. He just has to make sure now that the rest of the mission ends. He has to survive for 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds, he has to Hodor, and that is basically going to be the end of the game. He has to survive against this onslaught of Propagators, a little bit of aggro on some of these Vultures, and I think for the most part, everything is okay. There's one more Propagator left, but I think Orana is pretty much done. 4 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. And that is pretty much Orion's Transport done. He is not losing this mission. This is Orion's Transport saved, only just with 500 HP, but that is the mission done. And that is one of the hardest mutations done. That is GG.